that really was the secret sauce to make it work. Having a baby on the way, you really got to make this work. But that was the time, and there's never, the perfect time is now. People say, but I was like, you know what? Am I going to wait until they're 5 or 10 and then start a business, and then I'm going to miss, everything. I'm going to miss high school, middle school, and everything in between. Last 2 decades of owning businesses full time. And I can say with a nice smile on my face that I never missed. Became a soccer coach and never missed the kids' games or events or birthdays, and that was the whole reason of doing this. So when people say, how successful were you? And I go, well, depends on how what you measure success as. And yeah, just it's been great, and it's a lot of hours, a lot of work, but totally worth.
Giuseppe, welcome to the World XP podcast. How are you today?
Great, Eric. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I just wanted to start off for those listening. At the time of recording yesterday, Charlie Kirk was killed. He's been, I think, for a lot of people, kind of a beacon of free speech and debate and open discourse, and kind of maybe not one of the principal reasons why I started this, but definitely him and the other people around that space, kind of the open discourse space, have been reasons why I started to pursue the podcast. So, yeah, definitely praying for his wife and family and kids, um, and wish them the best, and may he rest in peace. I don't know, if you have any other thoughts that you wanted to add to that, before we get rolling, but I just wanted to put that out there, because I know a lot of people have been affected by it, um, and yeah.
Crazy times. Yeah, honestly, I haven't followed too much. I've been kind of we've been traveling quite a bit, but definitely crazy times. I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so to get into the rest of the conversation, the less sad things, why don't you do a quick intro, who you are and what you do? And by the way, when we first were in contact, I read your name and I was like, this guy sounds like an actor, like a movie character or
Yeah.
something. But anyways, do a quick intro for the people, who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into the question from the last guest, and we'll just hop right into your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Giuseppe Grammatico. That's a mouthful. So acting, yeah, maybe that's what I should have taken up instead. But yeah, I born and raised in New Jersey. I grew up in an Italian restaurant, shocker, but grew up in that restaurant, very young age, and just got to experience entrepreneurship. Got to really, figure out what it takes to own a business. It was not easy, and if my parents from Italy, from another country that didn't speak the language, could come here and make it, I'm like, wow, talk about the American dream is alive and well. So, and definitely set that bar really high. So. Yeah, got exposure really early, which I think makes a big difference. And learned that I didn't want that specific business, but I definitely wanted to be an entrepreneur. So went the corporate route. First person in my family to go to college. Married. We wanted to start our family. And I said, you know what? Working in New York City in the investment world was never going to see the kids. Like we didn't see that unless we were at work. So I said, you know what? Maybe it's a different job, maybe it's a different industry. Tried it all and figured out, you know what? It's business ownership that was ahead my calling. So met with a franchise coach, which is what I do today, and they really opened me up to the ideas of what was actually out there and some of the benefits if the fit is there for franchise ownership. And it's been about 20 years, last 2 decades of owning businesses full time. And I can say with a nice smile on my face that I never missed. Became a soccer coach and never missed the kids' games or events or birthdays, and that was the whole reason of doing this. So when people say, how successful were you? And I go, well, depends on how what you measure success as. And yeah, just it's been great, and it's a lot of hours, a lot of work, but totally worth it. And now I have my son exploring that same path. So
Okay, very nice. So,
yeah.
a question from the last guest is, can you share a moment in your life where you realized you had been underestimating your own strength, and what changed after that?
Yeah, for a long period of time, and maybe maybe it was the internet. We had access to too much information, but I was looking for this. I had to ask so many people questions. And some of those people, looking back, were not qualified, and nothing against them. But, I'm asking people maybe that never owned the business for business advice. And looking back, maybe that was kind of silly. Until you've gone through it, it's hard to give that advice. So I think it was the overthinking, the looking for that, I guess that approval at a very young age when I had the drive in me. And really, when I look back and say, okay, well, what was it? Was it was it my education? Was it my great looks? Ha ha ha. What exactly stood out? And it was my ability to be personable with people and to follow up and just, and stick with it in the good times and the bad times. So I felt like I was looking for something over and beyond when, they always say the answer is within. So, yeah, I think people tend to overanalyze and over research. And I definitely was in those, was wearing those shoes for quite a bit of time.
Yeah. So you mentioned the family business and offline when you mentioned you were started working when you were what, 7, I think that you said. And so what's that like? Like what's some of the memories from working, I guess, that early or helping out, we'll say, right? We don't want to
Helping
the
out. Yes,
yeah,
I was helping
we
out.
we don't want the labor people to come say, "Hey, child labor." But so you're helping out and like what's the exposure, right? Because I think there's some people that get a taste of the family business and they're like, "Nah, I don't want this. I just want to go to college and work a job where I don't have to have the responsibility of like paying staff and all these other things." And then there's other people like yourself who get a taste of it and it's like, "Oh, actually, I can do my own, like be responsible for myself and kind of chart my own course in a way." Um, so what are some of the memories from back then when you were little that you started to
Right.
sort of like what kind of made the light bulbs go off that maybe this is kind of what you wanted to pursue?
Yes, and that's the thing. Part of it was working at the restaurant. The other part was experiencing being a W-2 employee. So from the restaurant standpoint, it was nice to have that control to say this is my business. I grew this business, and really, the hours were definitely longer, and I can appreciate that. And when I dissected the business, I said, you know what, this is a business that thrives on the weekends, holidays, and evenings. So I knew that particular business wasn't the right fit for me. But I just like the control. I like the exposure as a business owner. We were, at that time, updating the website was, that was many, many moons ago. And that took a lot of time and effort to get the website up and running. But you got exposure to marketing, to customer service. You got to call the shots. I always say there is this aspect of time freedom, although with the restaurant, you really have to find the right people in place. But it was just this control, this pride, this something that you built on your own. And I didn't fully appreciate it until I worked on Wall Street. Went to school, got my undergrad, and later my graduate degree, my MBA, and said, you know what, this is great and all. This is a major accomplishment, but man, do I hate working for a big company and having all these layers of managers above me. I mean, when I screwed up, I think I heard it 10 times, and wish I heard it just as much when things went well. So I just, it was this hierarchy, and it's just like things would move slowly. It's like no decision was quick at the restaurant. I made a decision, we ran with it. If it worked, great. If it didn't, all right, we learned from our mistakes. But just to get an approval took weeks, if not months. And there were all these kind of limitations and layers and interviews. And if you were stuck with the manager you didn't like, which was not every case, you were stuck. And it was like, all right, my fate is based off of a person that I don't connect with, that may hold me down, because I just felt like we weren't clicking. So I think the appreciation came back and said, okay, I'm definitely not a corporate guy. I'm definitely not a restaurateur. What's the missing piece? And it's like, all right, well, it's just the time piece. So once I factored that piece in, we were able to look at other businesses. But I think it's a combination, and it's something that you don't learn from a book. You get inspired. Podcasts are still pretty new then, but you get inspired by podcasts. But until you actually go through it, sometimes it's hard to kind of figure out your life's calling and kind of what to do next.
Yeah. So when you're like high school age and you're planning on what you're doing, where was the college fitting in? So obviously you went to college, but was For some people, they do it because they feel like they're supposed to. Other people have a field that they really want to study or get into. Like I've got cousins that have gone into like cancer research
Right.
and years. It's like this is what they love to do. And then other people that are just like, well, I guess I'm supposed to go to college so I can get a degree. And then other people who go because their sports are involved or whatever. So what was the driving factor for you? Because it sounded like to some extent, and maybe it was less popular at the time that you were going through this, but now I think if somebody like if you were in high school now experiencing what you had experienced, I think a lot of people would say forego college and the debt that comes with it and just jump right into entrepreneurship. And I think that would be a more um I don't know if controversial is the right word, but like less controversial. Like I think that would be a more common piece of advice. So what was the feeling for you at that time?
Yeah, so it was a lot of things. Number one, it was okay. I felt like it was the thing that you had to do. Back then, Votech seemed to be frowned upon. Becoming a plumber. It's like those are it was like, well, why do you want to become a plumber when you can just go to college? I feel like that's changed. As you
Hmm.
mentioned, I feel like you hear about that more and more. But back then, it was more of you needed that piece of paper. I think a lot less people had your graduate degree. I'm going to be 47 this year, so this is going back a ways, and I felt like you needed it. And I did get exposure to our financial advisor, and really fell in love with that industry and said, okay, well, I think that's the path. I want to be a financial advisor or some portfolio manager. I didn't know exactly what that was, and started working for a firm, the same company that managed my family's money. It wasn't a lot, but just got the exposure there, and I started learning. Okay, this is cool, and in order to get a job, you really need that piece of paper. These companies, I work for companies like JP Morgan and Alliance Bernstein. You needed that piece of paper in order to get hired. So I felt like it was just something I had to do. It's something I'm proud of. I even went back and got my graduate degree. It's something that can't be taken away from me. It doesn't expire like an investor license and things like that. But I just felt like I had to do it. I wanted to get that exposure because I felt like that was my path. And after doing it for a few years, and money was pretty good. I was involved in the investment world. Said, you know what? I got my licenses. I got my education. I'm just not feeling it. Like I am just it's miserable going into work. The commutes were long, and I just felt like there wasn't a future for me in this, and it was just an absolute grind. So it took me, I felt like I had to do it, and then it was told basically if you want to get into the investment world, especially investment banking, you needed that piece of paper, you needed that license, and later to find out, yeah, I did need it, and I learned how to kind of invest my own money, but it wasn't for me. I just felt deep down inside something else was calling me.
Was that what you were interested in going into school? Like when you went into school, you had your sights set on kind of the
Yeah,
financial path? Okay. So that
yeah.
makes sense because there's other times when people go and they think they're supposed to go and they also have no idea what they want to do. So, um, okay. So at what point did like family start to come? It was the adjustment like spurred by family? You like had kids or whatever, and or was that, or were you already kind of feeling that way? Because and the reason I ask is,
Mm.
and I ask every entrepreneur or business owner this some version of this question, which is like, when did you know that it was time to take the leap from, I'll say air quotes, safety, and into kind of betting on yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, left my first corporate job to go back to grad school full time. I was living home, and after graduating from grad school, it was hard finding a job. It was 2000, I think it was 2003, 2004, and ended up back in the investment world, thinking, okay, maybe I needed a fresh take. Maybe it was a new company, and realizing, you know what, we have some money set aside. Just got married. Bought a house, and we wanted to start a family. And I'm like, this isn't working. This is the time. The time is now before the kids are born, because even if they were, born, which my son was actually born later that year in 2007, they're not going to remember this. So this is really the building time. So I sat back with my wife, which is, she's my rock. She supported me every step of the way. We lived off her income. I quit my second job, my job after grad school, I should say, and her income paid for the bills. Paid all our expenses. We didn't go on vacation. We cut back on everything. to make this work. But we said, we're ready to start a family. As I mentioned, my son was born later that year, 5 days before my birthday. It was crazy. And I was like, that really was the secret sauce to make it work. Having a baby on the way, you really got to make this work. But that was the time. And there's never, the perfect time is now, people say. But I was like, you know what? Am I going to wait until they're 5 or 10 and then start a business? And then I'm going to miss, everything. I'm going to miss high school, middle school, and everything in between. So the timing came into play. My wife's like, you're miserable. You're not, employee material. Let's go for it. Worst case, we lose the investment, we get back on our feet, we'll figure it out. But there was no plan B. It was, 100%, and this is going to work. And that's grit. That's the attitude you need to make this thing work. If you go in and just dip your toes and maybe I'll make it work, maybe not, odds are it probably won't be successful. But I don't feel like you have to necessarily be full time, but you got to give it, all your efforts. And if that means nights, weekends, holidays, and giving up going to events or vacations, and so be it if that, to get to that next level. So,
How do you feel about or what was the change in your mindset when your son was born? There's a stats that people are waiting longer to have kids now. There's a sentiment out there that I see once in a while where it's like, oh, if I have a kid, they'll like ruin my life, which is like to me a little bit
wow.
strange.
Yeah.
Like oh, I won't be able to go on vacation anymore because I have a kid, or I can't go, like things like that, right? It seems there's a like if you go on social media into like kind of the depths of social media where I don't recommend people go, but I'm a bit of a nutcase, so I end up there sometimes. You see some of these sentiments sometimes, and people that I am friends with are like either not in necessarily in long-term relationships, or if they are, they're like, well, I don't know, maybe kids in a few years. And so like what like just for somebody that might be listening that isn't sure about that sort of scenario and then also wants to create something like you've done, like what was that time like? How was the feelings? What was the drive like? How did things change when your son was born? Like give kind of a rundown of that, because I think a lot of people listening are similar to my age and kind of I think would be interested in that question, and I'm also interested in the answer. But anyway, so like what was that whole time like?
Yeah, I mean, we after getting married, we talked about having kids at some point, and we kind of planned it out. And sometimes, it doesn't go as planned, but we said, all right, we're going to get married. We're going to plan on having kids, by this age. And the whole shift for me was to get into business and take the risk now for them, because everyone has a different why. Some people in my 20s was making as much money as possible. As you get older, it's like, well, it's not all about that. And for me, it was time freedom because we didn't get to see dad every day unless we were at the restaurant. So I'm like, I wanted something where, and don't regret anything. And they gave me everything I have to, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have everything today. So I just wanted something a little bit different. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to become a coach and do the thing. So I'm like, what are the changes? So timing wise, it was okay before they were born, and the plan was to eventually have children. And I kid you not, February 2nd of 2007, I signed my franchise agreement. February 5th, 3 days later, we found out my wife was pregnant. So it was like, okay, this is meant to be. This is all kind of working together. And I wanted to pass on the stuff that I learned and give them options. My son's a senior now. We're looking at colleges. What's the path? We've looked at everything. We've looked at Votech, owning businesses. We've looked at college, and still haven't made that final decision. But there's so much that goes along with it, and there's a lot of general advice, and I try not to get too involved. And there's arguments: is college worth it or not? And it's like, well, it depends on the major. We don't know what this future looks like. People generalize, oh, it's entrepreneurship. But I don't know a lot of 17-year-olds. I think I'm one of the anomalies, and there's plenty of others that could launch a business at 17. I don't know necessarily if a lot of 17-year-olds nowadays could necessarily launch a business. Eventually, sure, but are they mature enough? Where are they coming up with the funds? I don't know a lot of 17-year-olds that have, maybe a couple 100,000 in capital if they're looking at a franchise or any savings. And where did those same savings come from? There's a lot of factors there in order to gain that appreciation for the business. So not against someone 17, 18 owning a business. totally for that, but you really have to kind of figure out your path. And what I really help people with today is setting the expectation. This is a lot of work. There's a lot of risk, franchise, real estate, non-franchise startup, whatever it is. There's a ton of risk, and I like to set the expectation. Like there's no sugarcoating here. But you have to have your why. And for me, my why was my family and time freedom. Those are the two things. Then took a step back and said, okay, well, what does a business look like? I said, I don't want to work nights and weekends unless it's at my desk at home. And I want it to be recession resistant because the economy didn't look too great back in '07, '08. So we put all these factors into place to say these are the kind of the safe rails. This is what I'm going to do. If the economy goes south, we made some shifts and modifications to the business. But yeah, there's a lot there, and you can't predict just because you say you want to start a family doesn't mean that it's going to come to fruition immediately. So there's a lot there, but ultimately, I always say bet on yourself. And if you're listening to this show and you have kids that maybe are 5, 10, would I recommend doing it? Absolutely, but just I wrote a book a while back. The key thing there is letting your family know, everyone on board, getting together at the dinner table and just saying, Mom and Dad are doing this. The reason we're doing is not just to make extra money, but it really is to be able to spend more time with you and go to the events and vacations and stuff like that. I think once they realize that, they don't feel like they're going to be ignored in that first year when you're trying to build that business.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
So you mentioned, so how did you settle on franchising? So you've gotten out of, you and your wife have the conversation. You're not having fun at, well, not that work is all fun, but you know what I mean.
Right?
You're not enjoying yourself at the job, and there's a decision in there, okay, where am I? You said you didn't want to do the restaurant, but just for the sake of examples, you can start a restaurant, you can start a retail store, you can start
Right.
a whatever the thing might be is. How did you settle on one, not doing a startup and doing franchising instead? And then two, how did you, once you figured out that it was franchising, narrow down exactly what route you wanted to go in? Because there's plenty of those as well, right? Again, restaurants, McDonald's, all
A
these
lot.
things have franchising. Then there's other places that also have that sort of thing. I don't know if does Foot Locker have one? I don't. I feel like they would. I don't know,
I don't know if
but
that's a good question. I don't know if it's a franchise, to be honest with you.
I don't
I
know.
gotta
I
look
just
into,
I
yeah,
just went
yeah,
through a store that seems relatively simple to get started with. Anyways, there's other things other than
sure.
restaurants, but you had to go down and say, okay, now that I'm doing franchising and I'm not doing a startup, I want to start something in blank genre. What were those conversations like? How did you kind of weigh up the pros and cons and then eventually decide? You mentioned, of course, that you didn't want to work nights and weekends unless it was at your desk at home, so that obviously factors into it. But outside of that, what are some of the factors that played into both of those decisions, whether it was to start up or franchise, and then once you decided franchise, what genre to go into?
Yeah, there was a lot there. So, on the startup side, so this one is a little bit shorter because I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to start up, nor the know-how or experience. I had a restaurant. I didn't want that. I was in financial services. I wasn't going to start a financial or investment startup, or that's not what I was interested in. So, I didn't have a lot there. There wasn't a lot of interest or know-how. I did do some research. I hooked up with a franchise coach, filled out a form. They contacted me, and I later became a franchise coach as well because I love the process. And they came back and said, a franchise is a business. I call it a business I almost said steering wheels, training wheels. And really, you don't need any experience in the business. Most people think of franchising as McDonald's, the Chick-fil-A's, McDonald's with the large investments, but there's 4,000 franchise companies in the U.S. alone in just about every industry. So the difference between a startup and a franchise is that the franchisor figured everything out. They have the playbook, how to do business, the vendors, the pricing, all that great stuff. And they're not interested necessarily if you have experience for the most part in that business. So if it's a roofing franchise, you don't need roofing experience. What they're looking for is the number one, can you follow a system? And followed by, if you can follow that system and you're coachable, do you have that transferable skill set? So in a roofing franchise, it has nothing to do with roofing, believe it or not. You can even, we'll call it painting, we'll call it cleaning, and a few others. It's really being able to go out and network, being able to go out on a sales appointment, manage a team, be a leader. Those are the things that they're looking for. That's why a lot of people that come out of the military do are really well. I read a stat: 1 in 6 franchisees are military veterans. I ran my own numbers. 1 in 5 of the families I helped with are coming out of the military. So that was the difference. The difference was I can now get exposure to just about all these different industries. And again, there's a handful out there that you actually need experience, but I can get into the roofing business with just my skill set of sales. So that's really what stood out. The playbook is created. I pay a franchise fee once, and I get access to the entire system day one. So I can pay the franchise fee, go to training, and potentially start generating revenue, which we did in first month. We generated revenue, not profit, but we started generating revenue almost immediately. So that transferable skill set. So we looked at sales, networking, the things I was good at, management, both the restaurant as well as working on Wall Street, followed by what was the standouts, the things I was looking for. I could care less about the service or the product or the widget, as I call it. If it made money and it checked off my boxes, I was open to a lot of things, just about everything. My biggest takeaway, or not takeaway, a requirement was recession resistance. I wanted something that would do well in the down economy, or service and industry that would always do well for the most part. I'm not saying it won't be affected, but do well. And we just got a nice stress test with COVID onto the industries that did well and did not do well. So that was it. I wanted the blueprint. We started looking at things, and this is what I helped my families. We started looking at investment range. I wanted something recession resistant. I did not want a brick and mortar storefront. I wanted something I can open up right away, immediately, and utilize just an office. Lower staff model, lower investment. We had numbers that we wanted to stay within, utilizing my skill set in sales and networking and management. There were a few other things but that's what we help people. We look at all those aspects. We look at what the average day in a life looks like. No working nights and weekends aside from we're always checking emails and maybe answering a phone call. So we looked at all those requirements and then really kind of narrowed down on a small list of companies that checked off all the boxes, not some, and then continued the due diligence with each and every one of the brands.
So what'd you settle on for the first one?
So a small company, we were in the commercial cleaning and I should say building services space. Commercial cleaning was our primary service, and we serviced buildings in North Jersey. And we specialize when I talked about pivoting and changing in going into '08, we doubled down on the healthcare industry. Why? They were always, people are going to need surgeries in a down economy. Stock market was down. So we really doubled down on those industries. It was very hard to get the proper licensing, the training, and all that kind of great stuff. So the bonds and all that kind of stuff. So we utilized the power and growth of a national a franchise to take advantage of those things. So it was, there was a lot there. There was some pivoting and some learning, but yeah, it was a fun business.
Okay, very cool. So this '08 time frame, things are going well enough that you're like, okay, this is looking like a good decision. Um, Where do things start to scale a bit for you? Did you open another franchise? And then what's the thought process there? Like, are you at a point where whoever you got, maybe a deputy or somebody that's
Mhm.
running it, and you can be like, okay, you run this, I'll give you a little bit more of a raise or whatever, and then I'm gonna go open up a new one and then scale? Or like, how is that what happened? Or kind of give the time frame, because there's a gap in there where obviously you become a franchise coach at the end, but if you've done it only one time and you said you enjoyed the process, that would lead me to believe that you've done it more than one time. So fill in that gap and kind of the cycle of scaling and the rest of that.
Yeah, so '07 we launched our first franchise. '08, literally on January 1st, 2008, we purchased a second territory. So we started in the central New Jersey market, expanded to northern New Jersey. So we covered 2/3 of the state. And at that point in time, I said, okay, I did everything my first year to keep it lean, did the sales, marketing. We did have a small team that we were utilizing, a couple part-time employees. And then we said, okay, I now took over another territory, another market. We consolidated everything into one. And that's when I started hiring a manager, got a manager in place, offered phantom equity, which is really popular, where essentially you're offering them a percentage of the profits. And, I made some mistakes along the way in how it was structured and said I would do it at the end of the year, which looking back was not a great idea because no one knew where you kind of stood until the end of the year. So we made some changes and I made some mistakes and I openly admit that to where it was offered on a quarterly basis, making sure we we're taking care of the staff and motivating and all that. So yeah, so we expanded it. We hired a GM essentially. We had an ops person to handle that side, full-time bookkeeper, full-time salesperson, and I kind of oversaw things, worked with the accountant, went on some of the sales meetings, and just always looked for ways of making the business more efficient. Meeting with my manager once a week in person. We talked just about every single day, so we really got to scale to the point where I wasn't in the office every day. We eventually sold that business in 2020. In that process, all those years been helping people in getting into franchising. Started dedicating full-time effort back in 2018, and that's been my bread and butter since. So, looking at potentially investing in another brand since we sold back in 2020. Now that you kind of see what's going on and what did well during COVID, a lot of new brands coming to market. So in that process of looking at kind of what's next, but really enjoy this piece. I love helping people, make one of the biggest financial decisions that they'll ever make next to buying a home. And I tell a lot of people point blank, I don't think this is a fit, or I think it's a fit, but maybe the timing isn't right. You need money, you need capital, you need or at least get an investor. But if you're going to run this venture and the business doesn't take off immediately, who's paying your rent, your mortgage, your student loans, and things like that? So I'm able to help. People say, "How successful are you?" And I go, "My job is to educate. We don't have anything necessary to sell. So if it means telling someone the timing isn't right, let's talk in 6 months, that's a success story." So I really get to educate, and at the end of the day, the due diligence, I'm gonna guide you. I'm a guide at the end of the day and a coach, but ultimately, I can only guide you and tell you, some of the research you should be doing. Can't force you. So some people really take it seriously. Some people, they kind of do it, and I always have to remind them, listen, if you're going to move forward with this, you got to be comfortable and talk to franchisees. So it's fun. It's enjoyable. I do everything. I outsource all my marketing and things like that, but I work with every single candidate, and I cap it to about 20 to 25 families that I work with actively at any given time.
Gotcha. Can you talk back to when you were kind of scaling that first one? You mentioned you hired a GM and you've hired some ops people and whatever. And this is a thing that I don't know how much kind of stock you've taken in terms of like care meter, because this is not your startup, it's not necessarily like your baby, but at the same time, it is your business and you want to make sure it's well taken care of
Right.
and things like that. So what were some of the things that you looked for in these people that you hired to kind of take over while you were scaling, and maybe um and my headphone conked out for a second in the middle of that, but I think I caught the rest of it. But like while you were scaling for the rest of it, what are some of the things that you looked for in the people that you hired to take care of and run the business successfully?
Yeah, I mean, I met with everyone in person. We had to click. It wasn't, the resume got you in the door, but I really got to meet with that, meet with them. The person that we had run the day to day, I wanted someone with experience. The thing I struggle with was as an entrepreneur, I thought I had to be the best at everything, and I had hired a coach. I think it was sometime in 2007. They said, no, you need to actually hire people better than you at marketing, at social media. And I'm like, man, I got this thing backwards. I didn't realize that. I thought I had to learn the business and be an expert before hiring. So there were some mistakes that I made. So, I wanted to meet someone that I'm like, you know what, we're going to be talking a lot. We're going to be meeting a lot. So I'm going to have to enjoy. If it's a struggle to work with that person, I don't care how successful they were or their experience. I need this to be enjoyable. The previous jobs were not as enjoyable. So that's something I'm going to have to control. So we met with an individual, multiple interviews, had impressive background, resume, knew the building service business really well. And we just clicked, and we had same viewpoints on things. You have conversations over lunch, and just as far as how the business should be run, his first thing was, and what I still remember today, we got to treat our employees first. We got to treat them really well. The employees are the lifeblood of the business. Obviously, yes, the customer is or the client is always right, but we always have to side with the staff. Find great staff, and have everyone involved. So as we scaled, I wasn't the only one interviewing. I had to meet with others, put obstacles in place. Yeah, call me, follow up with me, and just to see if they would follow up. I had them meet with the bookkeeper and other individuals in the organization, and just to see kind of what everyone thought of that person. And I'm not saying every hire was the perfect hire, but we even hired someone that actually never showed up for work. I don't know what happened there, and I said, stuff happens when you're an entrepreneur, and not proud of it, but I can laugh at it, years and years later. It wasn't funny at the time, but yeah, you're looking for that click. I can't explain it, but the resume was just to get in the door, but I really wanted to get to know that person. And then that person said a line that I used a lot was, "I'm looking for a home." I'm in the final stages of my career, whether that be the next 10 or 20 years, but I don't want to bounce around. I want somewhere I can essentially retire from. And that really, really hit home with me. I wanted someone that was going to stand with me, be my right hand man, and helping me run that business. So, meeting in person, none of this, Zoom is great and important, all that kind of stuff. But I was like, let's go out and have a drink. Let's go out and have a meal. And, yeah, we got to know each other, and it wasn't an overnight thing. It was several months of back and forth. It was a big decision for me in the business. And finally, he said, he's like, what's holding you back? Because he thought there was something going on. I said, no, this is a big hire for me. He's like, why don't we just try it out? And if it doesn't work in 30 days, we part ways. And kind of, gave an out. And I said, all right, you know what? That does sound great. Let's do that. And yeah, he was with me for many, many years.
Amazing. I think so many things happen over a meal like that, where both of you are almost kind of interviewing each other in
Mhm.
some sense. And for you can take stock of little things like, oh, they were polite to the waiter, or like little things that you see them interact with people in a public setting that you're likely never going to see that person again. And so these can be little things that can tell you how they'll be if things don't go well. Like for example, if the food doesn't come on time, or it's the wrong meal, or they ordered something else or whatever, and you see the reactions, and that
That's
can
real
give you,
life. That's
yeah,
real
it's real
life. If
life.
yeah, if you're berating the server, and I'm super sensitive to that, owning a restaurant, and you're berating the server and saying, what the heck, the food sucks or it's cold, where is it? Yes, you have the right to be annoyed, and there's a way to ask, but that's real life. And it's like, well, if they're gonna do that, what are they gonna do with my other employees, my staff,
Exactly.
my customers and clients? So 100%. I think having that, and it's not to trick anybody, but it's real life. It's like everyone's on their, best behavior in the interview, but what happens when the interview is over? So, yeah, I think just having that lunch and that, or that, I forget if it was lunch or dinner. It may have actually been dinner because it was late at night. He was leaving his job, so he was kind of interviewing after work. So, you learn a lot, and I highly recommend, not rushing the process and doing something like that. I think it goes a long way.
Yeah. So when you start the coaching stuff, where so the first, well, I guess, how'd you get the first client with that? And if that's a story, I can leave it there. But I guess it's more, how did you learn your processes and what started to work and what didn't? Um, I'm sure because at some point, right, when somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, I want to own a franchise, or I want to run a franchise, and I don't know how involved you are in getting these people in touch with like the franchisors, but at one point, like your reputation is a little bit on the line there, where if you're like, hey, I'll put you in touch with so and so, and then they don't follow through, then all of a sudden,
Right.
ooh, that's not a good look. So, kind of, what were some of the lessons, and how did that get started? And more from the client side, and there are lessons that have to be like the first time you help somebody do anything, there's of course a level of sales and a level of communication that kind of you have built up inherently over the course of the restaurant business and running franchises and hiring people and all these things. But there's still unknowns and stuff that you don't know
Right.
until you find out the hard way, or maybe not the hard way sometimes. But like walk through like the first person you coached and how that went and some of the things that you learned in that process.
Yeah, so taking a step back, so I knew that, in order to be a coach, I needed to work with great franchises that have at least at bare minimum been pre-screened, and that's a lot. With 4,000 companies, some of them have gone out of business, some of them stopped growing or paused development. So I decided to join and partner with the organization Franchoice, and Franchoice offers. These pre-screening of companies and pre-negotiated agreements, and essentially handles all the back office stuff that so that I can focus on my business. It is still my business, but we're essentially partnering on this, and they're assisting every step of the way. So in working with individuals, trying to remember the first person. I think it was via podcasting. I didn't have my own podcast. It was guesting. That was something new to me, and I still remember that first video. Horrible lighting, horrible camera. I think I was slouched. I don't even think I was looking at the camera, and it's a painful video to watch. But I got a few leads from that. Someone said, I saw this video floating around, and wanted to learn a little bit more about it. So, in doing this, it's really a lot of people will call you saying, I want this, I want that, but it's really working with the willing, if I had to kind of summarize it all. So we have nothing to sell in that. We're educating. We're saying, listen, in order to have a franchise, you need to have some access to capital. You have to follow a system, and you need to have at least a 6 month or less time frame to make a decision. Anything over that, you can research franchising in general, but maybe not a brand. We don't know if that brand's going to be available, kind of like buying a home. So, when we coach someone, we'll say, okay, what does this ideal business look like? But when you ask someone that, they're going to say either, I want it to be a restaurant, I want it to look like this, or you get the complete opposite. I don't know, I never owned the business. So it's really getting people to talk and figure out, ideally, in the perfect world, what does this business look like? And you got to work on that sometimes, especially because not everyone gives you similar answers, or they don't know the answer. So you kind of have to give them examples. I usually talk about my story. So, in working with them, I think what people say and what people do really stand out, and it's what people do that what people say is important. What people do is 1,000 times more important. I'm diligent. I'm follow up. I do this, and they don't respond to your email. You make the introduction and coach them through the process, and they don't speak with the franchisor or ignore the emails. Well, you said you're diligent, you're on top of emails, but you're not responding. That's a red flag. Franchisor is like, well, how are they going to be as a franchisee if they can't even respond to an email? And yes, life happens, and obviously all that, but in general, you see those red flags, and sometimes I was too willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, and we ended up working together for months for them to never do anything in franchising. So I think it really stands out, their action, their ability to follow up, work with you, their openness and things like that. I think, going back to the willing, I tell people, does it seem as obvious to you as it is to me that, this isn't working out, or that you're overworked at your job, and do you want to work on strategy on how to free up your time, or do you want to put this on hold? I have a lot of other individuals I'm helping with, and I want to make sure this is a priority for you. So I think the actions is big, and that goes across everything. When you're hiring employees and working with potential franchise owners. But yeah, we help them and we coach them and just say, if you're going to do this to me, the franchisor, this is going to be frowned upon. Probably not the right time to make the introduction. Sometimes that's the thing they need to get them back into gear and back on track. And yeah, we'll introduce them. We'll coach on the process. We'll introduce them to funding companies to look at funding options and franchise attorneys. So we spend a lot of time finding the right franchise, and then just say, hey, maybe these are some questions to be asking. It's not a full list, but you need to really talk to franchisees and ask them for their experience. So we really coach them on the entire process, but it's the franchisor that's actually following through with contracts and wire transfers and all that kind of stuff. They're the one actually kind of closing and agreeing to the franchise and taking the process from there. But I always say I'm a resource from looking at franchises to signing your first to 10 years later. I get calls all the time, people saying, I'm looking to expand or I'm looking for what's next, and we're able to help them every step of the way.
Very nice. You mentioned a little while back in our conversation, um, somebody could come to you and you say, "Hey, it's now's not the right time, but come back in 6 months," and you said that's a success. So,
Sure.
what defines success for you in that way from and also from the perspective of like how do you make I think people listening who are curious would be like, well, how is Giuseppe making money?
Sorry.
No,
Yeah,
you're good.
so the success is and this is another thing. People don't know how to measure or can only measure sometimes in numbers. They don't really, when you ask them what's success, they go right to money usually. So for me it's education. So I have an education platform. There's no franchise sales. We don't sign agreements. We have our fees. This is the best part is free to the person that's looking at the franchise. We're paid a referral fee directly from the franchise company if they invest in a franchise. Same model as an executive or recruiter or real estate agent. That's how we're compensated. So yeah, I mean, also doing this for the money as well. We're compensated that way. But for the most part, it's an education platform to say, I was in your shoes. I know what it takes to own a business, and that business ownership is not meant for everyone, or maybe it is, but a franchise may not be a good fit, or vice versa. So let's figure out together if it's a good fit, and if it's not, I have a incredible CRM. It's Go High Level. I've been using it for years, and there's a follow up in there. And if the timing isn't right, I was talking to someone that were going through a divorce. Why don't we pause this for 6 months? I'll put a task. I'll even send them a calendar invite. We can always change this. We don't know what in 6 months what that looks like, so we'll put it on the calendar. I like to keep people on the calendar. Make them accountable. So, and that's really how we measure it. If people are making millions of dollars in their franchise, I don't take ownership for that. I don't want, that's on the franchisee. They busted their butt. They followed the system. Some franchisees will flourish. Some I've seen other franchises fail, and there's a whole list of reasons why that could happen. So it's still a business. A franchise is a guide, but the franchisor is not running the business for you. They're giving you the keys to the Ferrari, to whatever vehicle you end up purchasing, but it's on you to maintain it, to drive it, take it to the car wash, the oil changes and stuff like that. So you got to follow that system, the maintenance schedule on the car. But ultimately, I take it to the point where this is going to be on you. There's an absolute risk. I advise you always to stay as close to the franchisor as possible. If you need assistance, don't wait, ask. You're paying a franchise fee, you're paying a monthly royalty. They're not doing this for free. They want you to be successful. The more successful you are, the more the franchisor is going to be successful. They get paid typically a royalty, which is a percentage. So stay close to them. Don't feel bad asking for help. So for me, it's all about, is this the right time? And some people, the timing is right, and fear kicks in, and they just can't get past the fear. They may lose their investment. We look at worst case scenario. I take it so far, and I'll be like, where do you want to go from here? And if the spouse isn't on board, typically that deal isn't happening. I always recommend, a couple, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever's in the household to be on that call, because everyone needs to be on the same page.
Yeah. I don't know if you can say this, but I'll ask it anyways. Are there ones that you've had great success, franchisors that you've had great success working with in terms of like it's smooth, the process is simple and straightforward, and the people that you work with are upfront and they're good with the people that you're coaching, and it's just like you have these people, I'm sure, in every walk of life where it's like, oh, good, I get to work with them again. Last time was such a joy. It made it so easy. Like, do you have one like if people were looking to get into um franchising, like are there some that you're like, yes, these would be good ones that you can say?
I can't, yeah, I can't name names because I also don't want to be biased. I think
That's fair.
what I will say is there, I think there's phenomenal brands out there. And I think their sales process needs work, if that makes sense. So some of the brands out there, and and maybe it's not a fancy, or maybe it's a, I don't know, a painting franchise, but I think the process is a little bit better, meaning that they are, before a meeting, they're sending a video. This is who you're meeting with. They're the person actually recording the video. This is what to expect. And then after the meeting, there's some takeaways of what to follow up with. I work with some other companies in different spaces where they, maybe don't have the video, which is fine. Everyone has a different sales process. And when I follow up in the meeting, they said, the meeting went good. Okay, when's the next call? I don't know. We'll follow up in 2 or 3 weeks, and there's no steady kind of information. So what happens there is that, you know, someone looking at a franchise, especially never owning a business, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what else to ask, or what else is out there. So I think there's an importance of staying on a weekly call, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes. How's your progress been? Have you gone through the videos? Franchisors have stepped up and created portals. And maybe this is a little secret, which I don't know if I'm not supposed to say this, but they track if you're actually watching these videos. We had someone say, "Yeah, we watched the videos," and we're like, "No, we show that no one has actually opened up a single video." So, and they admitted to it. And they say, "You know what? You are right. We kind of just we opened up the portal and did nothing with it." So, I think there are brands that do a lot more in education, and I think those are the brands. And sometimes maybe it's not in the initial; it's a brand new franchise. They've been around the block a few years because they know exactly who their franchise avatar is. They know exactly who does well. It's a full-time operator. It's someone that has not just a sales background, but really heavy on business development, relationship building, networking, and stuff like that. So they get very clear. So those videos are really, hitting home. This is the opportunity, but this is who does really well. And not only that, here's an average day in the life of a franchisee and exactly what they're doing throughout. They're getting in their car, they're wearing a suit, they're talking to a small business owner. It's you versus going to a homeowner and doing a sales call on flooring, or window covering and stuff like that. So really getting to see themselves in the role. So I think there are brands that definitely stand out, and also on top of that, and this is a really good question and topic. A lot of franchisors, at the very end of the process, they invited you to a discovery day where you got to meet the founder, typically in person, unless sometimes they have virtual events since COVID that became pretty popular. Now, a lot of the brands said, you know what, why the heck are we waiting until the very end of the process? We should be involved in the front end as well. This is the captain steering the ship. This is the person that's going to tell you this is where the business is going. This is what we're working on. We're working on national accounts. We're working on this. Ask me anything. And I think that's super important because they're getting on earlier on in the process. And the benefit is education, in the brand. You're getting some trust. Like I'm talking with the founder, but also the founder is also doing this two-way interview process to say, you know what, I love the so and so, but these I have some reservations now that we met, and it's better to find out that a match isn't there, or maybe there was a misunderstanding, or what have you, just in the conversation or how it went, versus waiting to the very end, getting that far along to find out you haven't been approved. So when people say, do I typically get approved at the very end of the process? I said the odds getting approved are really high if you've made it that far. If they don't feel like you're a good fit, if the founder's involved in the very beginning stages, they won't invite you to that discovery day. They'll kind of slow things down and say, we like everything about you. You qualify in every way, but the role of the franchise, we don't feel like it's going to work. You don't have as much sales experience. If you're open to bringing on a partner or a full-time salesperson, maybe with an equity stake or something, we can maybe make this work. Those are conversations, like proactive conversations,
Mm,
because if that doesn't work for you, then you part ways. But if it does, now you shift gears and not wait and be surprised at the end of the process that you're not approved.
yeah, that makes sense. So where'd the book come from? So did you have the idea that you wanted to be an author before, or was this like, I've learned all these things, let me put them on paper? And then how was that process in terms of getting it published, actually writing it down? Did you like the sending it to the publisher and them giving you notes and edits and all these sorts of things? Was that, well, just talk through that process in terms of stuff you learned and yeah, the whole 9 yards with that.
Yeah, so I started my launched my podcast, Franchise Freedom, in I think it was end of January of 2020. not knowing what was going to happen later in a few months. So we launched a podcast. The company I was with also, not only did they help with the creating of a podcast, distribution, and things like that, they also did creating books and turning people into authors, which I never even thought about. I mean, I thought about it would be cool, but that's the length as far as I got. So the CEO sat down with me, and it was during COVID. We were slow, right? The world seemed to kind of shut down, and we're like, all right, what the heck are we going to do? And he came to me and said, you know what, we're really growing this program. We'd like to test out some things, and our process is simply we are going to dedicate five podcast. I think it was 5 or 6 podcast episodes on these topics. If you're okay with it, I'll interview. The owner interviewed me, and we're going to transcribe it. We're going to still use them as a podcast, but we're going to transcribe it. We have a copywriter, and we'll turn it into a book. And I said, well, what's the benefit there? And he's like, well, the benefit is you gain some authority, but you're getting all your thoughts out at once, so that someone that is willing to look at franchising, but not ready for that conversation. Fear of maybe getting sold on a franchise, fear of just not knowing, what to ask. They can really read all your ideas in a very concise, book. I think I read the whole book in 30 minutes. So they handled all that. I could not even give advice, and if I had to do it on my own, I would have no idea. They kind of just gave me every step of the way. They said, okay, we're recording 2 days this week. Next, the copywriter, we need you. I had to, review the book 1,000 times, making little edits and changing things up a little bit. But I think it's great as a giveaway. I sell it on Amazon. I give it away to individuals that are maybe stuck, and I go, here's my exact roadmap and exactly how I purchased and found my first franchise. Not only that, there's some life advice in there, letting the family know what's going on, hiring your team of your financial advisor, your CPA, and your attorney, and things I learned and kind of mistakes I made over the years. So it's kind of a combination of things. And I always say, it's a quick little read. Amazon shows that the on Kindle, most people don't read past the first chapter. I think that was the number was like 80 or 90% of people don't pass the first chapter on Kindle, which I found to be pretty interesting. But it's definitely great as a giveaway. It definitely creates authority, and it's a great way to get your thoughts down on paper. Some people don't like reading. I'm not a big book reader per se. I like to watch podcasts and audiobooks. So I created an audio version, and then I also did a full podcast covering the topics in the book and some new things that I learned over the years, kind of as an addition, because I don't have the energy to write another book unless there was an easy way, kind of like I did. But for anyone looking to write their own book, you could start off with just a simple podcast using transcribing it, obviously outlining some of the chapters so you have topics to talk to, and finding an editor, and it's not as expensive as you think.
Huh. Did you do the audiobook yourself? Is your voice?
Audiobook is my voice. I did it to upload on Amazon. I did the whole book. I don't know what happened. Amazon didn't approve the audio recording for whatever reason. I don't know if it was
What?
the file. So I said, I'm not doing this again. So I mean, can't take away the audio from me. So I kept the audio files and said to anyone I have it, I share it. I'm like, if you want an audio version, I just share them the Google link. But yeah, I don't know. See, I did one thing myself without that company, which we haven't worked. This is going back 2020. We worked together, but yeah, Amazon said the file wasn't right, or something was wrong with the file. So yeah, that was the one thing I did on my own, and screwed it up. So, but yeah, there's plenty of companies out there that can assist in the process.
If anyone is listening and knows how to unscrew that, shoot me a message and I will
Yes.
put you in touch with Giuseppe
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
Is there anything that I haven't asked that you think would be worthwhile to add to the story, or any anecdotes that you would like to share that I haven't touched on?
Yeah, there's a lot, with the internet, podcasts and books. I mean, there's so much information out there. And what I see people is they just get paralyzed in knowledge. They'll just read for the next 40 years about owning a business and not doing anything with it. So, um, you really, when you're, the purpose of the research is, there's going to be a pain point. If you want a business just for another income, okay, is that really a pain point? Probably not. And there's probably easier ways of a side income like real estate syndication and stock market and things like that. So, setting the stage of business is a lot of work. Franchise or not, it's a ton of work, at least to get up and running. But, you don't need a lot of information. You don't need to look at what's the top 500 franchise list every year. Who cares? Odds are that most of them you may not be able to afford. They may not be available in your market. You may not get approved because you don't have the skill set needed. So I always challenge people to say, reflect inward, figure out what's the end goal. Is it to retire in 10 years? Is it to build a legacy for your family? And then figure out, get everything in order. Let the family know what's going on. Then do an internal audit. What are you good at? What don't you like? Get your finances in order. I just recorded a show that's being edited on this exact topic. Do that internal audit. You don't need help with this. You should have all your finances together, and you should be able to consolidate everything on a piece of paper. From there, it's like, okay, what's not working, what's working in my life. Some people love their jobs, and that's okay, but they do want that maybe the transition into business ownership. What does it look like? Not let's look at Subway and see if Subway fits, but figure out what does it look like. If it's under, I want to keep it to 100K and not have a storefront. Okay, well that eliminates all the storefronts and all the larger investments. Once you can kind of figure out your skill sets, what you like, your time frames, then you start to build something and say, okay, does a franchise even fit this model? Is it real estate? Is it syndication? Is it the stock market? And figuring all that out. So you don't need to be invested in everything, as Warren Buffett says. You invest in what you understand. I don't invest in crypto. I have nothing against crypto. I don't follow it. I don't know a lot about it. Although I'm sure companies are investing, so I'm indirectly investing some way via a mutual fund or stock holding. But invest in what you understand. You don't have to invest in every option out there, but pick your one or two vehicles. My vehicle is my business, is my main vehicle, and then from that business, I invest in real estate. I invest in the stock market, and now soon to be my next franchise. So keep it as simple as possible. Use budget-friendly tools that I found later on in life. Profit First, good friend of mine is a coach, Rocky Lalvani, great guy. He's taught me a lot. He taught me how to budget. I'm a graduate student, own businesses. I didn't really know how to budget in that. What's your marketing budget? I'm like, I don't know. It's 2000 a month. Where'd you get that number? I have no clue. I just thought that was a good number. So I didn't really know how to kind of distribute that and track it and keeping it really simple. So, keep it light, keep it simple, and talk to professionals in the space. So I got a leg up in franchising, talking to that coach. I could have spent the next 10 years reading books. So talk to people that have run businesses, that have actually been, in your shoes and done the things. They can give you the really quick, this is great, X, Y, and Z, but you have to factor in, this is an issue, or AI is really hurting our industry, or this is what it may look like. Talk to individuals. Those conversations lead to others. Take the time out, buy someone lunch, shadow them for the day, free labor. Who's going to pass that down? I'll work with you for the entire day. Show me what it takes to work at a restaurant. That experience working at for any small business, by the way, is gonna beat any day of the week working for a large company. Why? A small business, you're gonna get exposure to sales, customer service, billing, dealing with vendors, dealing with pissed off customers, all that fun stuff. So, working with a small business, the exposure is phenomenal. And if you can work with a few different people, see what it takes, ask them, how long until you took your first paycheck. For me, it was months until I took a first paycheck. That's not easy to do. And you can just say, I'm okay with it, but are you really okay with it? And actually ask other owners. That's where I think, that's where the real good nuggets come from. It's, talking to them directly, one on one, not in a group setting, and you really get to learn, the whole process and the ups and downs, and maybe avoid some of the mistakes. So, bet on yourself. That's number one. Don't get involved with the noise online. Bet on yourself. If you want something, go after it. Focus is key. It's really easy to get distracted, including myself, on social media, and you start reading things depending on what you're clicking on, and then college is a waste of money. Business ownership is a scam. There's too much out there. So focus on what you really want and go after it, and just kind of I almost put the blinders on and just go full steam ahead. And that's such basic information, but going back to 20 years, there's not a lot of stuff there. It's really just it's focus, it's going after it, and you're gonna need grit. If I had to summarize it in one word, grit is there's a TED Talk if you YouTube it. I forget the speaker's name. It's a 5 or 6 minute TED Talk, and it talks about grit and what it takes to run a successful business. And I think it nails the exact description and everything about it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, that's a perfect summary almost.
Yeah.
Tell the people where they can find the book and the podcast and your website and all those things.
Yeah, everything I kept it simple. My website, GG, my initials, the franchise guide, GUIDE. So GG, the franchise guide, and there's a resource tab. Free download of my book, Franchise Freedom. If you prefer a podcast, there's a podcast tab. It's got 250 plus episodes with the search bar. So exit strategies, looking for franchise attorneys, funding options. Just type it in. It'll pull up every show along with 25 FAQs talking about the questions I get on a daily basis. If you're ready to chat, as I mentioned, our service is free. I offer everyone a 20-minute call. I guarantee one thing on that call, we'll get clear on what you're looking for, be able to educate you on franchising and figure out together if it's worth having, franchising as a fit and having a second call. And you can book it right on the top right side of the right hand corner of the website. And there's going to be some questions like, as I mentioned, qualifying questions, just asking you kind of time frame and do you have money to invest and things like that. But I'll set up a call with anyone that has 20 minutes and I'll definitely point you. If franchising isn't the right fit, we put together a plan. If franchising isn't the right fit, just completely, and you're looking maybe the W-2 job, I have through the podcast and years of working someone that specializes in LinkedIn or a career transition specialist. More than glad to make any intro, no cost at all, as I mentioned, for the service to you.
Very nice. For those listening, check out the links in the description or link. I'll probably put the link to the book as well
Mm.
on Amazon. But check those out. Definitely, if you're interested, take them up on it. Wealth of knowledge for sure. I've taken a peek at the book and the FAQs and some of the other stuff he's got going on. Wealth of knowledge there. So check the links out. And thank you guys for listening. And we will see you guys next time. Peace. Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you want to watch another episode like this one, click there. If you want to subscribe, click there.